Festival experts study human events because our celebrations unite everyone. Part 1. Ra stood in the conference room of the Department of Cultural Cohesion, her crystalline body refracting the dim light into rainbows across the walls. She had studied festivals for 300 years across 40 different species, and every single one had the same problem. The rich celebrated separately from the poor. The religious separated from the secular. The young ignored the old. No matter how hard civilizations tried, their celebrations always divided more than they united. "This is pointless," said, flipping through the data pad with her six-fingered hand. The sociologist had gray skin that shifted to darker shades when she was annoyed, and right now she looked almost black. Another primitive world, another waste of time. Their festivals will be just like everyone else's. Rippled in disagreement. The Harbinger was a collective being, thousands of small organisms that moved together as one entity. When communicated, it felt like hearing thoughts from many minds at once. The preliminary reports are unusual. These humans do something different. "Every species thinks they do something different," muttered. Their supervisor, an ancient named, clicked his beak impatiently. His feathered body was bent with age, but his eyes were sharp. "The quantum observers have recorded emotional readings from this planet Earth that don't match anything in our database. Whatever these humans are doing, it's creating cohesion patterns we've never seen. You three are our best team. Go find out how they do it." Ra hummed a sound like crystal bells. "When do we leave?" "Immediately. They're having something called Carnival in a city named. 2 million humans gathering in one place for celebration. If we're going to understand them, that's where we start." The journey to Earth took 3 days through dimensional gates. Ra spent the time reviewing what little data they had. Humans were young as species go, barely out of their planetary infancy. They had no faster-than-light travel yet, no gravitational technology, no neural networks. They still used something called money and had divided themselves into competing nations. By every metric, they should be terrible at social cohesion. Yet the emotional readings told a different story. When their ship entered orbit around Earth, spread itself across the observation screens, trying to take in everything at once. The planet was covered in lights, billions of humans living in cities that sprawled across continents. "So many of them," whispered, "and they're all so separate. How can they possibly unite?" "They can't," said confidently. "No species can when they're this divided. We'll observe their little carnival, confirm it's just another hierarchical display of wealth and power, and go home." They materialized in 3 days before Carnival began, using holographic disguises to appear human. Ra found the experience disorienting. She was used to her crystalline form, not this soft flesh with only 2 arms and 2 legs. Struggled even more, having to compress thousands of organisms into one human-shaped body. Only seemed comfortable, though she complained constantly about the heat and humidity. The city buzzed with energy. Everywhere they looked, humans were preparing. They painted buildings in bright colors. They constructed massive floats decorated with feathers and lights. They practiced dance moves in the streets, their bodies moving to rhythmic music that pounded from every direction. "Notice the class divisions," said, pointing to a favela on the hillside, where humans lived in cramped housing. "Those people up there will celebrate separately from the wealthy in the hotels, just like every other species." But as Carnival approached, something strange happened. The divisions had identified began to blur. Wealthy humans climbed the hills to practice with samba schools in the favelas. Poor humans were welcomed into planning meetings with the rich. People who looked completely different, with various skin colors and body types, worked together on the same projects without any visible hierarchy. Ra began recording harmonic data, measuring the emotional frequencies humans emitted. She expected to find the usual patterns of tension, envy, and separation. Instead, she detected anticipation, excitement, and something else. Something that felt like belonging. "This is preliminary," she said carefully, But these readings are unusual. Wait until the actual event, replied. That's when the real divisions always show. Carnival began on a Friday evening, and nothing could have prepared the three researchers for what they witnessed. 2 million humans poured into the streets of. They wore costumes covered in feathers, sequins, and colors that hurt to look at. They danced to music so loud Ra's crystalline structure would have shattered if she'd been in her real form. They sang and laughed and moved together in waves of humanity that flowed through the streets like a living ocean. But what shocked the researchers most was who danced together. Rich and poor, side by side, wearing similar costumes. Young and old moving to the same rhythm. People of every skin color, every body type, every background, all celebrating as one. The barriers that should have existed, that existed in every other species the team had studied, simply weren't there. Push their collective consciousness out trying to understand the neural patterns. They're not a hive mind. Each human is completely individual, but when they dance, they choose to move together. They choose to connect. How is this possible? Ra's instruments were going wild. The harmonic frequencies she was recording didn't just show happiness. They showed unity. Not forced unity, not hierarchical unity, but something voluntary, something joyful. Humans were choosing to come together, and that choice created an emotional resonance she had never encountered in 300 years of research. A group of humans pulled into their dancing circle. She tried to resist, maintaining her scientific detachment, but they were insistent and laughing. Before she knew it, the sociologist was moving to the samba rhythm, surrounded by humans who didn't care that she was awkward or that she didn't know the steps. They just wanted her to celebrate with them. When finally extracted herself, her gray skin had turned a bright pink, the color for confusion. That shouldn't have worked. I'm a stranger. I clearly don't belong to their group. They should have excluded me or expected something in return. But they didn't, Ra said quietly. They just wanted you to dance. The carnival lasted for 5 days. 5 days of continuous celebration where social rules seemed to simply stop applying. A homeless man danced next to a millionaire, and neither cared about the difference. A grandmother moved through the crowd with the same energy as teenagers. People who probably disagreed about everything else in life came together in this moment and chose to be joyful as one. On the final night, the three researchers stood on a balcony overlooking where the main parade took place. Samba schools, groups of thousands of humans, performed elaborate routines they had practiced all year. Each school told a story through dance and costume, and the crowds cheered for all of them equally, even the schools from the neighborhoods. I don't understand, said, their voice filled with wonder. Humans have every reason to be divided. They have wealth inequality, racial differences, age gaps, religious disagreements, everything that tears other species apart. But here in this moment, none of it matters. How do they do it? Ra checked her instruments one more time. The data was clear. During Carnival, humans generated emotional frequencies that indicated complete, willing unity across all social boundaries. It wasn't perfect. She could detect individual conflicts, personal jealousies, ongoing tensions. But those things were simply set aside, temporarily overpowered by the choice to celebrate together. Maybe, Ra said slowly, humans understand something we don't. Maybe they know that unity doesn't mean eliminating differences. It means choosing to dance together despite them. Was quiet for a long time, watching the humans below. Finally, she spoke, her skin shifting to a thoughtful purple. One festival doesn't prove anything. This could be an anomaly. We need more data. Agreed, said. How many festivals do humans have? Ra pulled up the research data. Her crystalline form would have brightened with excitement if she'd been wearing it. Thousands. Every culture, every region, every religion has its own celebrations. And according to the preliminary data, they all show similar cohesion patterns. Then we stay, said firmly. Despite her skepticism, something had shifted in the. She had felt something in that dancing circle, something she needed to understand. We study them all. If humans really have solved the problem of social cohesion through celebration, the entire galaxy needs to know. As the final fireworks exploded over, painting the sky in gold and silver, the three researchers made their decision. They would spend the next year embedded with humanity, attending celebrations across the planet. They would learn how humans created unity from diversity, joy from difference, and belonging from choice. What they would discover would change the galaxy forever. But first, they had to understand the secret that every human child somehow knew instinctively. That celebration wasn't about being the same. It was about choosing to be together. Part 2. The research team spent the next 3 months preparing for their extended study. They established a base in a neutral location, Switzerland, and created a schedule that would take them to festivals across every continent. Ra designed new instruments to measure the emotional and social cohesion patterns they detected in, developed methods to analyze how humans formed temporary collective experiences without surrendering individuality. Despite her initial skepticism, threw herself into studying human anthropology with an intensity that surprised even her. Their next major observation was Diwali, the Hindu festival of lights celebrated primarily in India but recognized across the world. The team materialized in Mumbai expecting a religious ceremony, exclusive and hierarchical like most faith-based celebrations they'd studied in other species. What they found was completely different. "This makes no sense," said, watching from a rooftop as the sun set over the city. "Diwali is a Hindu festival, but look at who's celebrating." Below them, the entire city seemed to glow. Millions of small oil lamps lined windows, doorways, and streets. But the humans lighting them weren't all Hindu. Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, and people of no religion at all participated in the celebration. Neighbors exchanged sweets regardless of their faith. Children of different backgrounds set off fireworks together, their laughter mixing with the explosions of color in the sky. Observe the social networks forming and dissolving in real time. They're creating temporary communities that cross religious boundaries. A Hindu family invites their Muslim neighbors for sweets. A Christian shopkeeper decorates his store with Diwali lights. They're not converting or compromising their beliefs. They're just choosing to celebrate together. Ra's instruments hummed as they recorded the emotional frequencies. The harmonics are different from carnival, but the underlying pattern is the same: unity through voluntary participation. They're not being forced to include others. They want to. An elderly woman noticed them watching and climbed the stairs to the rooftop. Her hands were stained with colored powder and she carried a tray of sweets. "Why are you standing up here alone? It's Diwali. Come, eat something." She didn't ask their religion. She didn't ask their background. She just offered sweets and kindness because it was a festival, and festivals were for sharing. When they tried to politely decline, she insisted with such genuine warmth that even found herself accepting a sweet ball made of flour and sugar. "In my planet's culture," said after the woman left, "religious celebrations are exclusive by definition. They reinforce group identity by excluding outsiders, but humans do the opposite. They use religious festivals to include others." Not all humans, corrected, accessing the data they'd collected. There are conflicts, religious tensions, exclusion and prejudice. But during celebrations, enough humans choose inclusion that it becomes the dominant pattern. Over the following months, the pattern repeated everywhere they went. At Chinese New Year celebrations in Singapore, they watched Chinese families welcome Malaysian, Indian, and Western friends into their homes. The festival traveled across ethnic lines, carrying cultural meaning while creating bridges between communities. Lion dances performed in the streets drew crowds of every background, all applauding together. In San Francisco's Chinatown, they observed something even more remarkable. Chinese Americans celebrated New Year with traditions from China, but modified and adapted to their new home. Dragon dances incorporated jazz music. Traditional foods were served alongside American dishes. The celebration honored the past while embracing the present, creating something uniquely hybrid, yet still recognizably Chinese New Year. Humans have mastered scalable celebration, Ra reported to their supervisor via quantum link. They can adapt festivals to different contexts without losing their essential meaning. Other species struggle with this. They celebrate the same way across all 30 of their colony worlds because any deviation feels like betrayal of tradition. But humans embrace adaptation. Their supervisor clicked his beak thoughtfully. Interesting. What about smaller, less diverse gatherings? Do the unity patterns hold? That question led them to Munich, Germany, for Oktoberfest. The team expected a more traditional, exclusive celebration. Instead, they found 6 million people from dozens of countries drinking beer in massive tents, wearing Bavarian clothing, and singing German songs regardless of whether they spoke the language or had any connection to German culture. "This is cultural appropriation," said, but she sounded uncertain. "They're taking German traditions without permission." But the German humans didn't seem to agree. They welcomed the foreigners, helped them pronounce German words, taught them traditional dances. The celebration became both authentically German and completely international at the same time, a contradiction that should have failed but somehow thrived. Had a breakthrough during Oktoberfest. Humans don't see culture as property. They see it as something to share. When someone from Japan wears a dirndl and drinks German beer, the Germans don't feel stolen from. They feel proud that others want to participate in their traditions. The team's next stop was the Holi festival in northern India, and this was where even skepticism finally broke. Holi was a celebration of color, where humans threw colored powder at each other in massive street parties. The team watched as social barriers dissolved under clouds of pink, yellow, and blue powder. Rich businessmen in expensive cars stopped and were immediately pelted with colors by street children. Instead of anger, there was laughter. Instead of hierarchy, there was chaos. A grandmother smeared color on a teenager's face. A corporate executive and a driver danced together, both covered in the same rainbow dust. For one day, everyone was equal because everyone was equally ridiculous, equally colorful, equally joyful. Stood in the middle of a street party, covered head to toe in colored powder, tears running down her face. In her culture, emotions were carefully controlled, but something about Holi had broken through her defenses. "We've been trying to create unity through laws, through hierarchies, through logical social structures, but humans don't use logic, they use joy." Ra placed a gentle hand on shoulder, leaving a purple handprint. They understand something profound. You can't force people to unite. You can only create spaces where unity feels better than division. Their research continued through smaller festivals that revealed even more about human celebration. At Burning Man in the Nevada desert, they watched 50,000 humans create a temporary city based on radical inclusion and gift economy. No money was exchanged. Everyone contributed. Art installations built with incredible effort were burned at the end, teaching that experiences mattered more than possessions. At Day of the Dead celebrations in Mexico, they observed humans honoring their deceased loved ones with joy rather than only sorrow. Families created elaborate altars, shared stories, ate special foods, and celebrated death as part of life. The festival acknowledged pain while refusing to be consumed by it. But their most important observation came in a small American town during a 4th of July celebration. The town was politically divided, split almost evenly between two opposing parties. The team had studied the local news and social media. These humans disagreed on almost everything, fundamental questions about how society should function. Yet on the 4th of July, they all came to the same park. They set up grills next to each other. Their children played together. They watched fireworks together. Political signs came down for the day. Arguments were set aside. They chose, for just a few hours, to focus on what united them rather than what divided them. had her revelation watching two neighbors share a beer. She'd read their social media posts. They hated each other's political views with a passion. But here, at the festival, they chose to be neighbors first and political opponents second. The divisions didn't disappear. They would argue again tomorrow. But for this moment, celebration was more important than conflict. "I understand now," said softly. "Humans don't create perfect unity because perfect unity is impossible. They create celebrations that are bigger than their divisions. The divisions still exist, but they choose to celebrate despite them." Rippled in agreement. And because the celebrations are voluntary, the unity feels real. No one is forced. Everyone chooses. Ra compiled all their data into a comprehensive report. The harmonic frequencies, the social cohesion patterns, the emotional resonances, they all told the same story. Humans had discovered that celebration was the most powerful tool for creating temporary unity across permanent differences. Not permanent unity, because that was impossible for any diverse species. But temporary unity, repeated frequently enough, created bonds that lasted even through conflicts. "The secret isn't that humans don't have divisions," Ra said, finalizing her report. "The secret is that they've learned to celebrate together despite those divisions. They accept imperfection. They embrace messiness. They understand that you don't need everyone to be the same to have everyone come together." "The question is," said, "will the Galactic Confederation accept this truth? Most species are still trying to achieve perfect unity through control and hierarchy. Humans achieve imperfect unity through choice and joy." Smiled, her skin turning a hopeful shade of gold. "Only one way to find out. We present our findings and recommend the most radical experiment in Confederation history." "Which is?" Ra asked. "We host a festival, a real one, using human principles. We show the galaxy what celebration can be when everyone is invited and everyone chooses to participate." The three researchers looked at each other, understanding the enormity of what they were proposing. The Galactic Confederation had existed for 10,000 years. It had never hosted a truly inclusive, voluntary celebration. Every official event was bound by protocol, hierarchy, and tradition. But if humans could do it, maybe the galaxy could learn. Part 3. The presentation to the Galactic Confederation took place in the Grand Assembly, a spherical chamber that could hold representatives from 500 species simultaneously. Ra and stood at the center, surrounded by beings of every imaginable form. Crystalline entities, gas-based life forms, hive minds, individual consciousness uploaded to machines, and everything in between. Introduced them with formal precision. The Department of Cultural Cohesion presents findings from a year-long study of festival culture on the planet Earth. What follows may challenge our fundamental assumptions about social unity. Ra began by showing the emotional harmonic data from. The assembly watched recordings of 2 million humans dancing together, and the accompanying frequency analysis that showed unprecedented unity across social divisions. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several species shifted uncomfortably. What the data showed should have been impossible. Presented the social network analysis from multiple festivals. They displayed three-dimensional maps showing how humans formed temporary collective experiences without surrendering individuality. Notice how the connections form, intensify during celebration, then dissolve back into normal social patterns. But each celebration leaves residual bonds. Humans who celebrate together maintain positive associations even when they disagree on everything else. A representative from the Empire stood, their feathers ruffling with agitation. "This is clearly manipulated data. No species can achieve unity across economic classes without rigid hierarchy. It violates fundamental social dynamics." Stepped forward, her gray skin calm and confident. "I thought the same thing. I spent the entire first month looking for the hidden hierarchy, the control mechanisms, the social pressure that forced unity. I found none. Human celebration is genuinely voluntary. Those who don't want to participate don't, but enough humans choose to participate that the effect cascades. Impossible, said a council member, one of his own species. Our celebrations have always been segregated by class and profession. It's natural. It's efficient. You're saying humans simply choose to ignore natural social boundaries. Not ignore, corrected. Temporarily set aside. The boundaries return after the celebration ends, but humans have learned that repeatedly choosing unity, even temporarily, creates bonds strong enough to prevent total social fracture. They're one of the most diverse, divided species we've encountered. They should tear themselves apart, but celebrations hold them together just enough. The assembly erupted in debate. Some species were intrigued, others were skeptical. Many were openly hostile to the idea that their traditional hierarchical celebrations might be inferior to human methods. Ra let them argue for several minutes before playing her final piece of evidence. She showed footage from the small-town 4th of July celebration, focusing on the two political opponents sharing a beer. Then she displayed their social media history, showing the depth of their disagreement. The contrast was stark. These humans genuinely hated each other's political views, yet they chose to celebrate together. The chamber fell silent. How? Asked a scholar, their crystalline body resonating with confusion. How do they set aside such fundamental disagreements? Because celebration is more important than conflict, Ross said simply. Humans understand something we've forgotten or never learned. Unity doesn't mean agreement. Unity means choosing to be together despite disagreement. They celebrate what they have in common, even when what divides them is profound. An elder from the Harbinger Collective spoke, their voice echoing with the weight of thousands of minds. If what you say is true, this changes everything. We've spent trying to create perfect societies where everyone agrees, everyone thinks alike, everyone fits into their designated role. You're saying humans achieve better cohesion by accepting imperfection. Yes, said, perfect unity is impossible in diverse populations. Humans know this, so they don't try for perfect unity. They try for good enough unity, repeated frequently enough to matter. Pulled up the final slide of their presentation. Which brings us to our recommendation. The Department of Cultural Cohesion proposes hosting the first festival using human celebration principles. Open invitation regardless of species, rank, or role. Voluntary participation. Activities designed to encourage mingling across traditional boundaries. And most radically, we allow the festival to evolve based on participant input rather than following rigid protocol. The chamber exploded. Half the assembly loved the idea. Half thought it was madness. Arguments broke out in a dozen languages simultaneously. The session had to be paused for an hour while tempers cooled. When the assembly reconvened, the vote was surprisingly close. The proposal passed by only 7 votes. The festival would happen, but it would be small, experimental, and carefully monitored. If it failed, the Department of Cultural Cohesion would be disbanded. If it succeeded, it would change Confederation culture forever. The team spent 3 months planning. They chose a neutral station, Harmony Point, that orbited between 3 major trade routes. They sent invitations to every Confederation species, emphasizing that attendance was voluntary and that no rank or status would be recognized during the festival. They recruited humans from Earth to help with planning, bringing 50 cultural consultants who specialized in different types of celebration. The human consultants were shocked by Confederation culture. "You've never had a party where everyone's invited?" asked Maria, a Brazilian event planner who'd helped organize Carnival for 20 years. "No wonder everyone's so tense." "Our species has formal gatherings," explained the administrator stiffly. "They follow proper protocol." Maria laughed. "Protocol is the enemy of celebration. You need chaos, joy, spontaneity. You need humans and aliens dancing together even when they don't know the steps. You need food sharing, music mixing, boundaries dissolving. If you want this to work, you have to let go of control. Letting go of control was the hardest part. Confederation officials kept trying to create schedules, assign seating, establish hierarchies. The humans kept tearing up the plans. If you assign people to tables by species, they'll never mix, explained John, an American who'd organized multicultural festivals for 30 years. You need to create spaces where mixing happens naturally. Food stations instead of formal dining. Open dance floors instead of performance stages. Activities that require cooperation between species who never work together. The night before the festival, Ross stood in the main hall of Harmony Point, watching humans and Confederation workers do final preparations. Streamers in colors visible to all species hung from the ceiling. Music systems capable of producing sounds across every auditory range were being tested. Food stations featured cuisines from 50 different worlds, arranged to encourage exploration rather than staying in comfortable, familiar zones. I'm terrified, Ra admitted too, and what if it doesn't work? What if Confederation species can't let go of hierarchy enough to actually celebrate? Then we fail, said calmly. Her skin had settled into a peaceful blue. But we have to try, because if it does work, we give the galaxy something it's never had. A way to come together that doesn't require forcing everyone to be the same. The festival began the next morning, and for the first few hours it looked like failure. Confederation species arrived and immediately self-segregated, gathered with, resonated only with other, formed tight clusters with their own kind. Everyone was polite, but no one was mixing. It was exactly like every other Confederation gathering, just with better decorations. The humans refused to accept it. Maria grabbed the ambassador and pulled them onto the dance floor. Come on, you've got those beautiful feathers. Show me how your species moves. John organized a cooking competition that required mixed species teams. Sarah, a musician from Kenya, started playing rhythms that combined human drums with harmonic resonance and harbinger neural pulses. Slowly, reluctantly, the barriers began to crack. A young, curious about human food, tried something called pizza and declared it the best thing they'd ever tasted. A scholar discovered they could create crystal harmonics by dancing with humans, the vibrations of movement creating frequencies they'd never achieved alone. A harbinger collective found that when they merged their consciousness with the crowd's emotional energy, they experienced something like what humans call joy. The turning point came when climbed onto a stage and did something unprecedented. She removed her translator implant. Without it, she couldn't understand other languages, but she could dance. She started moving to the music, her gray skin shifting through colors in a traditional celebration dance that most of the galaxy had never seen. Other, shocked that a respected sociologist would do something so undignified, joined her anyway. The dance was being shared, performed publicly, offered to everyone. Humans joined in, copying the movements inexpertly but enthusiastically. Then joined, adapting the dance for feathered bodies. Added harmonic resonance. Within minutes, a traditional dance had become in collaboration, messy and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. That was when the festival truly began. Species stopped worrying about dignity and started focusing on joy. A senior Confederation admiral found themselves in a conga line with a human child and a gas-based life form. A judge learned to appreciate the taste of chocolate. A harbinger collective discovered the simple pleasure of throwing colored powder at each other, holy style. Barriers didn't disappear completely, but they became permeable, porous, crossable. Ra's instruments recorded emotional harmonics she'd never imagined possible. Hundreds of species, thousands of individuals, all generating frequencies that indicated voluntary, joyful unity across every imaginable boundary. Not perfect unity. There were awkward moments, cultural misunderstandings, species that still didn't quite connect. But the overall pattern was unmistakable. The galaxy was learning to celebrate together. The festival lasted 3 days. By the end, species that had been in the Confederation for centuries but never truly interacted were exchanging contact information, planning future meetings, forming friendships. Businesses were discussing collaborations. Diplomatic channels that had been frozen for decades suddenly opened, all because individuals had chosen to dance together, eat together, laugh together. On the final night, the team stood on an observation deck, watching the celebration below. Fireworks exploded outside the station windows, visible in wavelengths spanning the electromagnetic spectrum so all species could enjoy them. Inside, the dance floor was packed with beings of every form, moving together to music that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. "We didn't just teach them how to celebrate," said, their collective consciousness still buzzing with the emotional resonance of thousands of species. "We taught them that imperfect unity is better than perfect separation." Ra's crystalline form glowed with satisfaction. Humans understand a paradox that the rest of the galaxy needed to learn. You can be profoundly different and profoundly together at the same time. Unity isn't about eliminating differences. It's about choosing to celebrate despite them. Smiled, her skin cycling through colors that represented every emotion she'd experienced over the past year. Pride, hope, joy, and underneath it all, gratitude. "I started this mission convinced that humans were just another primitive species with nothing to teach us. I was wrong. They're not primitive. They're wise in ways we'd forgotten were possible." Their supervisor appeared on the communications screen, his elderly features looking younger somehow, as if the success of the festival had given him new energy. "Your final report." Stepped forward. "We recommend establishing a new division of the Department of Cultural Cohesion dedicated to studying and implementing human celebration principles across the galaxy. We also recommend that Earth be granted immediate membership in the Confederation, not as junior members but as cultural advisors. They have something to teach that's more valuable than any technology." "Proposal accepted," said, "and the title of your report?" Ra and looked at each other and answered in unison. "How humanity united the galaxy by teaching us to party." 3 months later, requests for festival guidance were flooding in from across the Confederation. The Empire wanted to host their first truly inclusive celebration. The Republic was redesigning their traditional festival to encourage cross-class participation. Even the most hierarchical species were experimenting with voluntary, joyful gatherings that put celebration above protocol. Earth became known not for military might or technological advancement, but as the world that gave the galaxy something infinitely more precious. The knowledge that unity doesn't require uniformity, that celebration can bridge any divide, and that choosing to dance together, even temporarily, can change everything. The festival became an annual event, growing larger each year. And at every festival, humans and aliens alike would remember the simple truth that changed galactic civilization. When you choose joy over division, even for just a moment, you create bonds that last forever. The galaxy had learned to celebrate, and in learning to celebrate, the galaxy had learned to truly be united.